Welcome. Welcome to Restorative Yoga on a Sunday afternoon, a cloudy Sunday afternoon here in Virginia. But luckily right now, not raining. But if you guys need rain wherever you are, I currently am, with my mind, sending a little rain your way. Not a terrible lot, because we've used up a lot of it, but a little bit. I was on the phone with my family in Arizona, and they would have liked to have some rain, so we'll send it their way, if not yours. So we're going to need a few little props. Now you can do all kinds of different options for props. Cushions from the couch, like if the cushions come off the back or off the bottom of the couch, you can use those. You can get a handful of pillows. Some throw pillows work really great because they're generally a little bit smaller and firmer. And you can put a couple of them down and throw a blanket over them and they'll be good. Like the next step, blanket. Even just if you have a thick enough blanket, you can use a blanket instead of a bolster. You can just roll it up. And then if you have some things like a yoga block or a strap, those sometimes come in handy, so you can have those nearby. Now, I'm going to go with a blanket and a pillow to get myself started for this morning. Now, you can use any kind of pillow, like I said. So I'm going to use this large rectangular pillow. Two throw pillows put down next to each other would work okay. They're a little squishier. This is really quite firm, which is why couch cushions work kind of good because they have a little more firmness to them, generally speaking. But you can stack a couple things on top of each other to get a firmer surface. Excuse me. And then blankets make great surfaces. So if you roll them up or fold them, and if they're, if it's like a big bed quilt, and you fold it a bunch of times, you'll have quite a lot of nice surface to work with. Okay, so we're going to start with a reclining butterfly pose. So I'm going to lie down with my back over this. I might put a little block underneath it to lift the height of it. I might not. We'll see how it feels when I get down here. And then I've got a blanket to put under my legs. Now the idea with restorative yoga, again, just in case this is your first time coming to restorative, or watching the video in case you watch it later, the idea with restorative is that we're going to get into the poses and then really deeply relax and stay a while. So it becomes a kind of meditation on letting go. It's basically the idea. So I'm going to try to relax all the tension in my body. I'm going to use the breath and I'm going to use the pose to give my mind something to do so that it won't wander around and think about all the things I don't need to think about right now. This will probably happen. We will just redirect as soon as we catch ourselves. This is basically the way it works. So I'm going to lay down with my back on this, and then I'm going to make sure that my legs have enough support that it's not too intense in the inner thighs. So if the body feels like there's a really intense stretch going on, it will generally tighten up around it. So what we're looking for is the ability to relax even though we're in a pose. Okay, that's our goal. Okay. So this guy, if I pull the blanket in kind of close to my thigh, that gives me quite a lot of support. And if I put it actually down near my ankles, that's a little bit more medium, but there's still support there. So as long as I'm supporting one end of the bones, either the top bones or the bottom bones, I'm going to find generally that it works pretty well. If you have really sensitive knees, make sure that you support whichever one of those makes your knees happy. Okay? I generally go for the upper support, but some days I change my mind. So your feet can be far away or closer in. Just kind of want to feel that out. And then whatever support you've got under your back, you just want to make sure that everything can touch the ground. So if my elbows don't completely touch the floor, I want to make sure that I put a little something underneath there. So I've got one elbow that's a little bit of a floater, but the other one is touching. And I know the shoulder will relax within about a minute and I'll be okay. But if a minute into this shape, I don't feel myself touching down, then I might want to make some changes, okay? So as much as possible, we just support every bone that's involved in holding us in the pose. And then once we get settled, and you might change your mind, like you might have to readjust here and there to make everything happy, low back, shoulders, etc. I give myself the first minute or two just to see, like, is this going to work? Do I need less support? Do I want to go with smaller pillows or bigger pillows? comfortable where I can feel myself letting the muscles relax, then I just try to stay put. So for me, it really helps to do this little process that's part of what's called Vipassana meditation. And so in the Buddhist tradition, there's a lot of different ways to meditate out there, you guys. For the most part, there's kind of two main traditions in the Buddhist tradition. There's what's called shamatha meditation, and I am not a Buddhist, so you should chat with an actual Buddhist if you want to know more about these. But there is shamatha meditation. This is the kind of single pointed focus meditation where I stay with generally the breath, but there are possibilities that you could keep your attention somewhere else, but I just make my attention stay put. So I just pay attention to the breath, and when I find my attention wandering to other things, I just come back to the breath. And that is a really good technique, and it's a great technique for deepening our focus and trying to, generally speaking, just kind of train the mind to be a little less distracted. That's the idea. I have been doing it for more than 3 decades, and I still find it challenging. So it's possible that it's really a fool's errand, but we try. The other kind of meditation, the kind of main meditation type is called Vipassana, or it's translated as insight meditation. Now, this meditation is more about recognizing whatever comes up while we're sitting still, and then trying to sort of get to the root of it. So if I've got a thought that keeps repeating itself over and over again, I with my mind, I sort of investigate, like, why is that thought repeating itself? Is there an emotion attached to it? Without being too overly storytelling about it. So not making up stuff necessarily, but just seeing, like, is my body tensing up in a certain spot when I have that thought? Was there other things present in the moment that I can notice about that thing? And it just brings a little bit more of a like, we learn a little bit more. The shamatha is really about training the mind, and then this one is really kind of getting to the heart of why we might be obsessing. Usually if I have an obsessive thought loop, like I've got something I just can't get out of my mind, it's because there's an emotion that my ego didn't want to feel attached to it. And so if I could just feel the emotion behind it, quite often I can undo the thought so it doesn't keep reappearing. So I can just let myself be embarrassed or sad or whatever it is. So that's the notion. So in Vipassana, what happens is you start by just kind of scanning through your body. So you relax and scan the muscles in the top of the head all the way through the body, down to the toes. And as you're doing that, trying to consciously relax every place you find that has a little bit of muscle energy, muscle tension. And so do that for yourself when you get into the poses. And then, kind of borrowing a little bit from that notion, if we find places we really can't relax or that keep tensing back up, whether it's the shoulder or the area right between the eyebrows or anything like that, then what we do is we try to kind of figure out why is that tensing up without creating any sort of like, oh, that's because my sister told me this 5 years ago, blah, blah, blah. None of that. Like, no storytelling. We're just trying to get to the bottom of what's happening in the moment. Am I tensing up there because my body isn't supported appropriately? Or am I tensing up there because, oh, I've got this to-do list that I keep obsessing about or whatever? So you just kind of get what's the thing that's causing the tension. Allow yourself to be present for that thing, and then we'll try to let it go again and see if the tension comes out. That's the notion. So we're going to stay for a wee bit longer, about 3 more minutes. And you can just repeat that process of just sort of gently kind of noticing the body. Or you can just let yourself stay focused with the breath. You could do either of those techniques while we're hanging out in the poses. seconds left or so. Just for this last 30 seconds, just come home to your breath. We come out of restorative yoga poses, or yin yoga poses for that matter, we're going to come out really slow. So take a nice big inhale, and then exhale out, and then you can use your hands for support to just bring the legs back together. And then I like to pause right there for a moment, just letting my feet rest on the floor. And then slowly extending the legs so I can kind of roll over and get out from underneath me, whatever's behind me. Now, we're gonna do some work on our back. That's a little more active than that pose we just did, but before we get to that, just take a moment to sort of allow yourself to either just be, like you could just lay still, or lie still, or I need to remind myself what the rules are for those, but in any case, I think lay is an action that you do, and lie is when you're more passive. So lie still might be the right one. In any case, you can give yourself a little more action and do some little leg windshield wipers or whatever might be appropriate. So we're going to do some movements that, these are kind of not traditional yoga poses per se, they're more somatic movements, but I like them. They sort of give us a nice range of motion, change, and they do some nice things for me anyway, to release any added tension or any stress that I might be carrying around just from the movement pattern. So we're going to do a little sequence for the shoulder, and then we're also going to do a little sequence for the hip flexor. So one of the things that's kind of interesting to do is to get into this position that I'm in right now, which is called constructive rest. So you're lying on your back, and you put your feet on the ground so that your knees are bent, and essentially you're almost like you're ready to go into bridge. Except with the bridge pose, we often bring the feet in as tight as we can so that there's a little more structure for lifting the hips. But in constructive rest, the feet are far enough away that the legs are quite comfortably able to stay put. Now, some people need their feet a little wide, and they need to let the knees dip toward each other to find that stability. That causes more trouble for me. So I leave my knees just kind of balanced in the center line. And generally my feet a little wider than the hips works best, or pretty close to hip distance. I'm not measuring, I just am feeling it from, you know, the inside. So laying on the floor as I am, with my arms just by my side, I can just kind of take stock of how my shoulders feel right now, how my low back, how much arch my low back is off the floor. And then if you take your thumbs right to the front of your hip, just notice how high you find the tissue there. So the psoas and its friend the iliacus that live here in the bowl of the pelvis, when those muscles are tight, and they tighten up for a variety of reasons. They tighten up when we sit in a seated position for too long, when we're, if we do like lots of kind of folded body active work, like cycling is a big one, because you're kind of in this position with the legs bent, and then you're really working the hip flexor. So it makes the hip flexor very strong, but it also can get a little on the tight side. Sometimes runners and other people who do repetitive actions where the legs are powerfully brought, through this range of motion that the legs do in human locomotion. But then the other thing that happens is when we're stressed, because this is one of our muscles that's really responsible for helping us move away from danger or stand and fight, as the case may be, it tightens up when we're feeling stress or we're feeling uncertain or whatever. So I notice that my hip flexors are much tighter when times are a little bit challenging or when I'm uncertain about my future. So I like to just palpate right on the front edge of the hip, so I can feel like how deep do my thumbs go in there. And then we're going to see what happens as we do this movement to see if we can feel the muscle. And right there it's mostly connective tissue, but we'll notice because it'll drop backwards, okay? So it's just a fun little like barometer for our practice. So the way that we're going to start this is with the shoulders. So you just need to make sure that you can extend your arms all the way up over your head without running into the furniture, okay? And if you can't do a range of motion where your arm goes all the way to the floor above your head, no worries. You'll just go as high as your arms are allowed to lift, and then you'll come back down. So starting with your arms resting beside you, you're going to reach down with the arms, okay? So it's like you're stretching towards your heels. And then as you bring your arms up towards the ceiling, you'll just keep stretching through the arms, and then you'll, if you can, go all the way overhead and just keep stretching through the arms. And then we'll stretch through the arms all the way back. So keep stretching all the way through the range of motion until your arms rest beside you again. Okay, that's it. That's just that simple. Just stretching through the arms, and we're trying to keep reaching out the whole range of motion. Just keep reaching. We're gonna do this 3 more times. So reaching out all the way through the whole range of motion over your head if you can, all the way through, all the way back. Just keep stretching the arms. And you're just moving smoothly. It doesn't have to be really slow. Just a slow, steady movement will do fine. Keep stretching all the way down. Okay, so once the arms are resting on the floor again, you're just going to bend at the elbow, bring your elbows up so that they're basically pointing at the ceiling, and then grab your elbows with your hands. Now, when I grabbed my elbows, the arm that's closest to my face is my right arm. So I'm just going to keep a reminder of that. My right arm is the arm that's closest to me. So I'm going to stretch the elbows away from me and try to lift them all the way up over my head, and then bring them back to chest height. Just keep stretching through the elbows, bring them up overhead, and bring them back to chest height. And then one more time, bring them up overhead, and bring them back to chest height. Now what I'm going to do with my left hand is I'm going to grab this right upper arm. Right arm was the one that was on top, so that's the one I'm going to grab. And then I'm going to pull my right upper arm towards the left while I simultaneously try to let my right shoulder blade come back underneath me. So I'm pulling a little bit and then resisting the pull. And this we're just going to hold for about 3 more breaths, just pulling across and resisting. About chest height or so, just, you know, you got to work with whatever you got anatomically. The activity is in my left arm pulling and in my right shoulder blade trying to go back down to the ground. Okay, so I'm going to release, come back to the center. I'm going to shake my right arm out, just lift it up in the air and shake it. And then I'm going to come back and make sure that when I grab my elbows again, my left arm now is the one that's closest to my face. So pushing up through my elbows, reaching the elbows up and overhead, and then bringing them back so they're about level with my chest. And then pushing through the elbows, bring all the way up over your head. And then bring it all the way back to about chest level. And one more time, push the elbows away from you. Reach them up over your head. Coming on back, and then I'm going to grab my upper left arm with my right hand, pull that left arm to the right, and then I'm going to try to let that left shoulder blade get super heavy, and even try to tuck it in underneath me while I'm pulling with my right arm. And this is just a little isometric isometric contraction and under my shoulder blade, trying to get that thing to the ground while I'm simultaneously making it impossible with my left hand, or right hand rather. 2 more breaths. Alright, so I'm going to release that arm. I'm going to take my left arm, stick it in the air, give it a shake. And then just for a moment, just put the arms down and see if anything has shifted. So for me, it feels like my arm bone has kind of dropped backwards a little bit. It was feeling like it was moving forward a little bit. Now it feels a little bit more like it's dropped back. We're going to do one more movement pattern for the arm, and this will kind of take us in to the hips. So we're going to roll onto our side. Now I'm going to use my blanket for a pillow. You could use a yoga block or anything that'll hold your head in a pretty level place. And then laying on your side, knees can be bent, or you can have your legs straight, but whatever's going to give you the most stability. stick your arms out in front of you to about chest height. So my right arm is laying on the ground. My left arm is going to be the arm that moves. And the first thing I need to do as I circle this arm around the first time is, am I going to run into the furniture? And if I'm going to run into the furniture, then I'm going to adjust my place before I do the rest, okay? So reach your arm out in front of you, go over your head. It's almost like you're drawing a big rainbow, and we're stretching the whole way around. It turns into a little bit of a twist, and then let it get softer as you bring the arm back to the center. So we're going up and over the head, reaching out, even a little bit behind us, and then coming back. Any of this range of motion that's not okay for your shoulder, just bypass that part, okay? This is, oh, it's really good. But if you've got tender places, you might have to work with them differently. Coming around. Going up overhead. Alrighty, one more time, going up overhead. Alright, so that was my left arm that I just did. So I'm going to take my left knee and bring it in toward my armpit, and I'm going to reach up there and see if I can get hold of my left big toe. Now, if this is ridiculous, then you can do this with a strap. I'm going to straighten out my right leg, and then I'm going to try to straighten out my left leg. And what I'm trying to do with my left leg is stretch my shoulder more than I'm trying to stretch my inner thighs or my hamstrings. So this works out for me okay, but again, you might have to use a little strap. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing on the gas pedal and trying to stretch my arm way up there to my big toe. So that, and you can keep your knee bent. You don't have to have a totally straight leg. As long as your arm feels like it's stretching, that's all we're trying to do. Now, if this isn't working out, don't worry. It's only one thing that we're doing. So it's not the end of the world. But I'm trying to kind of traction my shoulder a little bit. So as I let my body stay heavy, I'm feeling this kind of release around my shoulder joint and armpit. Okay, 2 more breaths of this ridiculous nonsense. This, by the way, is Vishnu's couch pose. In case you wanted to know. I can't remember how to pronounce the word in Sanskrit, but I will look it back up. It's a Naga something, asana. Alright, so we're going to bend the knee, let go. I'm going to shake out my left shoulder. And before we come back to the right sides, we're going to roll back onto our back. Now, your left leg is going to be the working leg. My right foot I've put back into constructive rest. So I've put that back on the floor like a bridge pose. With the left leg, I'm going to extend the leg all the way out. So I'm going to ride the floor with my heel if I can. And just extend that left leg out so my toes point up. Spread the toes out a little bit. And then I'm just going to glide the foot back into constructive rest. Now, if your mat is sticky and your foot doesn't glide on the floor, you can lift it just the tiniest little bit so that the weight is a little bit off of it so that it will glide. But try not to lift it way up off the floor. So for example, you might just like, oh, I can just barely feel my skin touching the floor, and then glide the leg out to straight. Let that front part of your hip relax, and then glide the leg back a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to do that 2 more times. Lift the toes, glide the leg out to straight, left one. And then keeping the toes up as you go, glide it back into place. And once it's back next to your right leg, you just let it relax. Okay, 1 more time. Lift your toes, glide the leg all the way out to straight as best you can glide, given the circumstances. And then we're just going to glide it back. I always have to do a little over the hump of the edge of the mat. Okay, so now if you just feel your left hip and feel your right hip and see if there's any difference that's happened yet. Sometimes there is. Now we're going to add a little bit more to this. So we're going to put the hands behind the head. The reason our hands are behind the head is so we can press the head back into our hands so that we're not doing anything with our neck, right? We're going to try to use our abs to curl the upper body a little bit off the floor. And we're going to do 3 movements with this leg. This is my thing this week, so we're going to do it. So to pick up your toes, glide your left leg out all the way straight, toes pointing up. You could even, you can bend the knee a little bit if you need to, but really stretch the front of that left hip. Then we're going to lift the knee towards the center, towards the belly button, and we're going to curl up towards the knee. Again, keep your head pressing back into your hands. Heel to the ground, glide that leg out straight. And then bring the knee up and towards the belly and curl up towards the knee. So this both releases the psoas and it also strengthens it a little bit. So if part of our problem is that it's not very strong, this will help us So one more time, gliding through the center. Now we're going to take the knee to the left elbow when we come in the next time. So stretch the leg all the way out long, and then bring your left knee toward your left elbow. It should curl up toward it. And then stretch that leg out. Left knee to left elbow, curl up toward it. Stretch it back out. One more time, come into that left elbow. Good, stretch the leg back out. Now we're gonna take the left knee and bring it towards the right elbow, so it's gonna come across. So stretch the leg and then bring the knee across and curl up like a little twist. Just the right elbow comes towards the left knee. Stretch out through your heel, stretch the front of that left hip, left knee, right elbow. Good. Last time, keep your neck pressing, so your neck is nice and secure, keep your head pressing back. Knee to right elbow to knee. Well, it's not gonna touch, but it doesn't matter. Go. So now we're gonna stretch the leg out, let go of your head. One more time, reach out through your leg, and then we're just gonna rotate the leg back and forth through an internal rotation and an external rotation. So when your leg rotates inward, feel the muscle that's responsible for that internal rotation. And then when the leg rotates outward, feel the muscles in your butt that are responsible for that. So right on the front of the thigh, you'll feel the little tensor fascia lata as you go inward, and you'll feel your piriformis and other muscles in the hip rotators in your under your glute when you go the other way. So just feel those. It's kind of fun to get to know the muscles in your body. Even if you don't know their names. And then drag your foot back in when you're ready. And then resting both legs right there beside each other, find constructive rest. And then you can take your thumbs right back in towards your hip and just see if anything is different. Now my left hip, the connective tissue there feels like it's dropped back in. And my right hip is still at the same place it was. So there's been a little bit of a change there in my hip flexor, which is nice. Now there may not be any change for you. This is just a really mild somatic exercise. For me, it generally makes a difference. So if it does for you, if you feel like it helps take some pressure away from the low back or from your knees, then you can keep it. You can put it in your arsenal for later. All right, so we've got to do the other side. Now I'm going to rotate around 180 degrees, but you can just roll onto your left side if you don't need the visuals. So my left arm's going to be the one that's on the bottom, laying on the side. I've got my knees bent for stability. And then I just need to make sure that my right arm with this first circle is not going to smack the furniture. And so I can reposition myself as needed. Okay, so right arm is on top. That's going to be the one that makes the circle. I'm going up over my head, reaching out to the side. As soon as I get to about chest height, I can get softer and bring the arm back. So going all the way around, trying not to smack furniture or your plants, or your dog, whatever you got in your general vicinity there that could possibly cause trouble. Reaching the arm out. I need to go a little bit lower. Reaching the arm out. We're going to do this one more time. Oh yeah, somehow I've managed to get extra room here. As I've been stretching out, my arm's gotten longer. Oh. And then as we come back to the side, we're going to bend this, to the starting position. We're going to bend the right knee, reach out, grab that right big toe if we can, and then give that right arm a nice big long stretch. So I'm trying to traction the arm a bit, straightening out the left leg. Sometimes you have to do a little extra core work for this one, so there's your bonus points for core. I'm trying to let myself become like, just weight. The reason I think this works for me is because I have short arms. It might not work for people with long arms. Okay, so I'm gonna let go of my foot and roll onto my back. This right leg is gonna be the leg that glides. So first I'm gonna get my left leg into place. Then I'm gonna put my right heel on the floor and stretch that leg all the way out to long. And then I'm just gonna glide it back and put it right beside the left foot, okay? So, toes up, glide the heel out, stretch through the front of the right hip, and then glide it back. Okay, lift the toes, stretch out. So we're going to do this, that last time there. Now we're going to do the little curl up. So we're going to bring the hands behind the head. Again, you can press your head back into your hands. Glide that right leg all the way out straight, and take a moment and stretch through the front of your hip, and then bring that knee in and curl up toward it. Again, we're not trying to overly do anything here. We're just trying to activate the muscles. Stretch out. So we're doing this whole range of motion between lengthening and curling in. Good, one more time. Stretch the leg all the way out. Exhale and curl in. Now we're going to take the knee towards the right elbow. So first, stretch the leg out, flex the foot, reach through that whole front of your right thigh. Then curl it towards your right elbow as you curl in. Stretch it out. Reach through the front of that hip. Bring it in, curl up. Stretch it out. Reach out, and I even try to stretch my toes apart and then come in towards that right elbow. Okay, good. So we're going to stretch out again, reach out. This time we're taking the knee towards the left elbow and twisting. So left elbow, twist up. Stretch that right leg out. Give the front of that hip a chance to open, and then curl up. And then one more time, we're just going to stretch that thing out. Good. Bring it and curl up. Now once I get down, I can put my head down and relax. I'm going to stretch my leg out one more time. Really give it some length there at the front of the hip. And then rotate through the internal, external rotation, just right at the femur bone socket there. Just rotate the leg back and forth, back and forth. Not in a hurry, just, in a lazy way, rotate your leg. And then when you feel like you're good, go ahead and just draw that leg back to its friend there on the left, and see if there's any sense that whether one hip is a little tighter than the other. You can just see how the connective tissue is responding. Now, generally speaking, I come out pretty good. My right side's usually tighter than my left, and after this, it almost always feels a little more even. So that's our little somatic movement practice for the shoulders, and also for the hips, the places that we carry stress and tension in our body. So we're gonna roll to the side, and we're gonna sit up, but take your time. So with restorative yoga, generally what I like to do is I like to try to let my head be the last thing that gets up. So I just sit myself up, and then when I get all the way there, I just let my head float up on top. So giving ourselves a moment. Now, we're gonna do a seated forward bend, and you can do either one where your legs are closer together but straight, or wider apart but straight. So you can decide how wide the V should go between your knees, or between your inner thighs. The one caveat is don't go to the farthest point of your range of motion. We'll be a little bit conservative with this pose. Now, all right, now with this forward bend, if you have lots and lots of trouble with your low back in relationship to forward bends, if forward bends really bother you, then you can do a more upright position, or you can sub out for this a position where you do like a side bend, for example, if that's a little less problematic. You can side bend over one side and then over the other, and I'll give you kind of a halfway point. The other thing that can help is elevating the pelvis. So if you put a couple blankets or just a folded blanket underneath your hips, so that the pelvis is a little bit higher, often that will take the pressure away, and it'll allow the pelvis to move forward so that your back doesn't have to do all the work. Now, I'm going to put a little support under my knees, because having a slightly bent knee makes this process a little bit easier, and you can even put like a throw pillow under each knee. And then you're going to let yourself kind of see how far forward will my pelvis move in space. And this is where moving the legs closer together might be better, or moving them a little wider apart might be better. You're just going to kind of feel that out. And then you're going to stack up enough yoga props, enough pillows, enough throw cushions or folded blankets, whatever you got. We're just going to stack things up until we can basically just rest in this position. A chair also works, so if you don't have enough throw pillows, but you can get your feet underneath your couch, for example, you could lean against the couch cushion, or the couch. You could bring in a little, go grab a dining room chair, come back, put it in front of you, and lean onto the dining room chair. So that will all work. So whatever little yoga props you've got, you can build yourself a little Stonehenge out of yoga props, which is what I'm going to do. So I put down a couple blocks, and then I've piled up a couple pillows so that I can fold forward, and basically my spine can stay kind of, neutral. And I can take the benefit of the forward bend from the pelvis, back of the legs, that sort of thing. Okay? So this is our pose. So you get to decide. We're going to be here for about 5 minutes. So you should take the time to stock up all the props, because it's worth it. If we're going to stay that long, it's worth going ahead and making it comfortable. Now, I like to rest my forehead generally so that I have a little bit of breathing room, but if it gets too humid, I will rest my chin on the top of the stack so I can breathe some not so humid air. Doing an alternative, like a little side bend, take one more big breath, and that is your halfway point, so that you can come out of there. Give yourself a second to allow the spine to kind of adjust, and then do your other side bend. If you're still forward bending, we're halfway through. one last minute here. Take a big breath. Let go with a sigh. And then we're going to inhale our way out of here. You can kind of use your hands for support. Now, I like to lean back a little bit and even bend the knees. I'm going to get my pillows out of the way first. And hang out there for just a little bit. Do a little windshield wipery stuff. So that we have this little moment just to kind of chillax. All right. So our transition pose is going to be a twist, and we're going to do this twist as like a forward motion, a kind of seated forward into the twist. But you can substitute for it a reclining twist where you lay on your back and bring your legs over to one side, or even you can do a really simple seated twist and put that in instant. So I'm going to show you how this goes. I need a lot of props for this. So I'm going to show you what it looks like with a huge ton of props. And you may not need any props or not much, so you might just need one little pillow on the floor. So I stack a block and then a bolster. And then I need a blanket that kind of goes on my chest so that I have room for everything to go. If you don't have these issues, you might find that your chest will settle right onto that bolster with no trouble at all. So I put a blanket diagonally across. Now, I am going to have my face pointing the same direction as my knees because that's more comfortable for my neck, but some people will find that they can rotate their head all the way around, and that actually becomes really nice. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit sideways. Now, I'm going to be on my greater trochanter, which is this bone that kind of pokes out a little bit on your femur. It's part of your femur bone, your big leg bone, and it points out to the side a little bit. And for that reason, if your floor surface that you're on is kind of hard, like I have a yoga mat and then carpeting, and the padding underneath that is pretty soft. But if I didn't have all that, like if I were on a wood floor or something like that, then I would put a blanket down under the hip just to make sure I've got a little extra support. So essentially I'm going to sit on the edge of my hip or lean into that, and then I'm going to turn and rest my chest on this bolster. I'm going to turn my head the same direction as my legs are going, and then I just make little adjustments. So I sometimes have to pick up my hip so that my side waist isn't too curled in. I sometimes will straighten out one of my legs so that that's a little bit more comfortable, a little more steady. And my usually whatever arm is on the side where my face is, it's a floating arm. So I put a little block there so I have a little arm rest. Okay. So my other arm rests on the floor quite nicely. It's just, you know, to get all of my anatomy in place here, I always have one floating arm. So there's our twist. So my upper back essentially is twisting towards the bolster. So choose one of the 3 twists, and we'll stay with this guy for about 4 minutes or so in that range of time. Kind of letting ourselves get settled in. And then once you're settled, once you've kind of got everything resting on the floor on a surface, could be on a pile of blankets, that's fine. Then just let yourself relax.
sort of like that story of the princess and the pea, where the princess climbs into bed and she's comfortable at first, but then somewhere, you know, within a little bit of time, she can feel that there's something hard in the mattress of the bed. It turns out it's a lentil, but she's a princess, so she could feel the lentil underneath all of the padding of the mattress. That's the story, right? Well, similarly, sometimes you'll get into a yoga pose thinking it's comfortable, and then that lentil shows up in your yoga pose, and you're not comfortable anymore because you're a princess. I'm kidding, but we're the princess of the story. So if you find that you get into a pose and you think it's comfortable, and then as you settle, it gets a little less comfortable, don't be afraid to get out, add some support. Rather than kind of trying to tough it out, it's better if we allow a little bit of adjustment so that we can really relax. That story has a lot of problems. I'm going to just put out there for the record that I recognize that there are troubles with that story. Oh, goodness. Seconds or so here. Maybe 33. But close enough. So just come back home to the breath. Now, when your inhale finds you, take a nice big inhale. Exhale, let go with an ah. And then essentially what we're going to do is just push ourselves up to sitting. Again, kind of letting your head kind of be sort of the last thing that shows up here. And then we're just going to pause for a moment. Now, if you were laying down, you could just go to the center. I forgot to mention that part. All I'm going to do is kind of move my props to the other side here so that I can
do the other side, but I'm not doing it yet. I'm letting myself wait so that everything is okay. Okay. So I like to just notice there's a point where I feel something change in my spine. So right now it still a little bit feels like it's twisting in the upper part of my back, but I'm starting to notice this kind of, the way that I often describe it is like, you know when you kind of ease the seat back in the car, it's kind of like, it just feels like your body just lets go a little bit again, or there's like a little bit of a little energy whoosh, just a little sigh. It's not too dramatic, but it feels nice. And so you kind of get that sense that your spine's kind of let go, and then you can set yourself up for your other side. So again, I'm just going to kind of place myself on my side of my hip here, turn my chest towards the bolster, make adjustments as needed so that I can rest, and then once you get settled in, then let yourself relax and take the time you need to settle in. My hair is tickling my face. So, anyway, what I was going to say is, like, we've been here for, around 45 seconds. So if you notice right now things are uncomfortable, definitely make the changes. And if everything feels pretty good, then take a nice deep breath and let yourself, just kind of let that seat ease back, right? Let that happen. And if it just won't let you relax, then definitely you could choose one of the other options or just adjust your props until it's just right.
another minute here. I'm going to take a nice big breath. Let go with a big and then we're going to get ourselves up to a seated position. Now, we have one last pose to do. I don't have to do it right away. I'm just moving stuff out of the way. I like to be busy. Catching myself. I'm catching myself here, yogis. Okay, so in any case, what we're going to do next is our final pose. So you get to pick whether you want to do like legs up the wall or legs over the couch or anything like that, or you can do a regular shavasana. So if you're a supported shavasana. So you can choose either of those two options. I'm going to do a supported shavasana. And if you have now, if you do legs up the wall, if you're going to travel over to the wall, take some soft things with you. So you might want a blanket underneath the hips or under the shoulders. I often, when I do legs up the wall for a period of time, so we're just probably, hang out for anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes, depending on when I notice we should be done. Having something softer underneath you is a little more comfortable. So if you took a blanket and just opened it up so that it was long enough for your whole torso, that might be more comfy, or you could put a folded blanket underneath your hips and a littler surface under your head, whatever you prefer. Okay, so I'm going to open my blanket up, and I want to make it so that I have I can get access to one layer of blanket, because I'm going to use that as a little eye pillow, a little eye cover. So I'm going to lay that down. That's where my head's going to go. And then I'm going to put my legs over top of this. Now, if you're a little chilly, which normally I wouldn't have to say in August, but it's kind of a chilly day. So if you are, you could cover up with a blanket as well. Chilly for August. I think it's in the 70s, but in any case. So I'm going to take this blanket and just give my head enough support that it feels really nice. Just a little lip of blanket underneath my neck. I don't want it to impact the curve of my neck. I just want it to gently kind of cover it or support it. And then I'm going to take this little top layer of blanket and use it just right over my eyes. And I even like to tuck it in a little bit so that doesn't make you feel claustrophobic. You can tuck the blanket in around your head a little. You can even take the whole thing and tuck it around, then you have more of a little cave, especially if you want your ears to be a little bit blocked so you can't hear as much. Just kind of curl the blanket in around your head. Oh, hi, Sappy. Hi, Muffin. And then let your body relax. So whether you've put your legs straight up or over the edge of the couch, or you're just laying down, this is our last pose. So find your way to just letting go. One more time, just letting our body relax. The art of not doing anything, basically. For people who have a hard time not doing anything. It's nice to have a practice where you get to practice not doing anything. for a short period of time. I find it really helpful just to come back to the face muscles and make sure the eyes are relaxed and allowed to kind of sink a little deeper. The cheekbones and the lips and the jaw are all really soft and relaxed. breath again. So you can feel your breath all the way to your toes. Extra big breath. Let go with a sigh. And then you can start to wiggle your fingers and toes. Stretch out the hands of the feet. Give the wrist and ankles a little movement. Stretch out the whole body a little bit. Little banana shapes, star shapes. Hug yourself, give yourself a back massage. Now, you've been up the wall this whole time. It'd be a really good idea just to hang out with your knees bent for a couple of moments. And then roll to your side and hang out that way for a while, because if your legs have been up, your blood pressure tends to drop. So give your body a chance to kind of adjust. So when you roll to your side, just hang out there for like 30 seconds. I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe a minute is better. It's hard to say. You'll know if you feel it all lightheaded, then you should not go yet. It's good to have a little transition from one space to another, especially since we're going to basically transition from doing yoga to doing regular life stuff. Let's take a moment. And then when you're ready, you can sit yourself up. Hopefully I didn't do too crazy with the not having a clock thing. Mostly on schedule. We'll find out when I get over there again. So we're going to take a nice big breath together. Big inhale. Big sigh. Namaste, beautiful yogis. Thanks for joining me today for a little extra quiet yoga.